Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. And today, I wanted to discuss an important topic for me, and it's very relevant to what's happening right now. It's related to some of the many things I've gone through in my life. It's an important principle. It's related to a very important technique and method from Transurfing. And that is the idea that every crisis is an opportunity for an advantage. And so a lot of people right now, because of the current economic situation and what is happening, it's going to be tough. There's going to be tough changes. You may have to change your job to something completely different. You may have to move into a different house or to a new location. So there's a lot of abrupt changes, and it's a scary time. I have been through many incredible crisis situations. And as I've gone through these, I believe I've learned an important lesson. And every time I go through it, I still feel the raw emotion of it. It's hard to avoid that, but as I go through it, I'm learning some techniques that have helped me so that you can treat a crisis like it's an opportunity. Every crisis is an opportunity. I got to thinking about this. I've been doing a lot of reading about Edgar Cayce and some of his stories. I've examined this in other episodes on reality transurfing, and I've built it into my overall belief system in a big way. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. I haven't told a lot about my business story, but I think it's important because what I went through in 2008 could be for you a helpful lesson. It has been for me, and it's guided me all the way to what's going on now. So I was in the mortgage business in 2008. It was a thriving industry. Lots of money was being made. People were doing all kinds of crazy mortgage loans in 2008. Negam loans, 125% loans, really crazy loans. It was at a point in time after I had been in the mortgage business and in real estate for a long time where if somebody could breathe on a mirror and they could see the breath, they would approve them for a loan. So these were crazy times. People were getting $1 million loans with no income verification. It was a crazy time. And so maybe I knew in the back of my mind that this couldn't last, but then came the 2008 crash, perhaps as a direct result of the way the market had worked. But in my own case, it's essentially like a sales job. Sitting and selling people on the phone on the benefits of this mortgage. And I didn't like it. I didn't like how I felt. I was a great closer, and I'd get you on the phone and I knew all the techniques, but it wasn't aligned with my heart. My heart didn't like it. Oftentimes you would offer loans that people didn't need, and part of your success would be your ability to convince people to do loans that they don't need. So I had tremendous guilt for some time over my business and what I had done, and it wasn't good for me, my soul, but I continued to do it because it was lucrative and I could take care of my family. I know many of you out there have been in similar situations. You're in a job you don't like, but you're making some money. And then I had been depending on this line of work. I'd always been able to find one if a company went out of business or moved town. There was just, in Orange County, a lot of mortgage companies. I worked at Ditech, I worked at GMAC, I worked at some big mortgage companies countrywide. And then everything changed. All the mortgage companies kind of went out of business. Nobody was hiring, and these loans weren't being offered. So even if I worked, I would not be able to do the same things I could do before. And I didn't want to do it anymore, but I was not in a position where I had a bunch of savings. I had a child to take care of, but I didn't have like a bunch of savings. I had nothing, basically. And it was a crisis moment. I had a mortgage on a house, and I had been living a lifestyle that was very comfortable for me. So I decided I have to figure something out. And in these times of crisis, the point I'm trying to make is that's when you have an opportunity to let it suck you away to a lower level, or you can use it to become a great advantage. So the first thing is I just started to look around my environment and figure out a way I needed to make some money. So I would sell different items on the internet that I owned, and I got rid of my comic book collection, started selling different things. And then one day came along where somebody bought something from me that I had listed for sale. I think it was on eBay, and couldn't find it anywhere. And it would have been a big deal. I would have gotten negative feedback on the order. So I found another place to order that same item, and I made money on the deal, even though I didn't own the item. And it was a big revelation for me that I could not have the item on me and I could sell it online. And then I started using this dynamic in several different ways. And I started to take my book collection that I had and started to sell that and get an idea of the way that different things sold on the internet. And because of that, I had a wonderful business that I could expand and still work from home. And it allowed me to do the things that I wanted to do. Now, at the beginning, it was very cumbersome because I would do all of the orders myself, and I would work for hours and hours. And it was very difficult work for me to do. It was very mind-numbing work. So I listened to a lot of books while I would do it. It wouldn't be hard, but I took that time because I'm working hard and it's depressing to work that many hours. And I convinced myself, if I can make enough money right now to pay my mortgage, these big bills, and not go and work and do this and align something with my heart, find something else, then I can do this. Then my heart will let me. And so I worked these long hours for a long time. But as I did this, my business grew, and I was able to have an online business where I could sell different things through different stores, and it allowed me to have a business where I could work from home and be free. Eventually, I was able to figure out a way to reduce the hours that I was working at it. And then it just became this wonderful job that has allowed me freedom to travel and do whatever I want. And I would never have had that opportunity, nor have been able to own my own bookstore and other businesses if I had not looked for the opportunities that were available to me in that moment. Oftentimes it can be with a mistake that things happen. And there are so many examples of people out there that had their big breakthrough during a crisis. There's so many famous self-help gurus that will give you those same stories. You listen to Tony Robbins, and he had nothing. He was living in Venice, California. He had no money, and that gave him the motivation to completely transform. So many times my business would reach a point where I would need to pay some big loan or something would happen, and the crisis would hit. And each time that I had a crisis, the key was in how I reacted, particularly in the moment. Your initial reaction is important. And if you find yourself complaining or whining or worrying during that time, it will broadcast out this sort of frequency that will bring you other things related to this. When you're in the crisis, you're in the whirlpool, and these events will pull you down. But I ask you to look back on your own life and really ask a question. Have you noticed that a lot of the crisis and major problems that came up in your life turned out to be benefits to you? And everything happens for a reason. I was just reading about Edgar Cayce, and I saw some examples from this as well. In 1901, when Edgar Cayce was, I think, 23, he developed a bizarre and seemingly incurable illness. He lost the use of his vocal cords and could talk only in a whisper. This may not seem like a particularly terrible ailment, but to a budding insurance salesman, according to him, to support his family with his new career, his illness was devastating. It was a complete crisis for him. And he went to every doctor in the area, according to what he said, in the area around his hometown of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And not one of them could even determine what was wrong, let alone figure out a way to cure him. Finally, in desperation, he went to a hypnotist, Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. Check out my other episodes on Edgar Cayce. He goes to a hypnotist. Traveling through Hopkinsville was the Heart the Laugh man, a show business hypnotist who was working the local vaudeville circuit. Slightly embarrassed at pursuing such an unorthodox remedy, Cayce made his way to the backstage area of the playhouse and made an appointment with the stranger. And so this bold move, born of his desperate predicament, was the first step on his journey that led to his first psychic reading, a hypnotically induced trance from which he diagnosed his own ailment. His laryngitis was quickly cured when he followed the remedies suggested in this reading, and his health crisis became a breakthrough to his life's destiny. Indeed, Cayce's entire life can be seen as a series of such critical breakthroughs. I think I read that in 1923, Arthur Lammers came to, I think his name was Arthur Lammers, came to Cayce not with usual physical concerns, but to ask for a psychic reading on his astrological horoscope. This reading yielded the first reference to reincarnation, which brought a spiritual crisis to Edgar Cayce, a crisis in confidence, doubting the reliability of his psychic information. And he turned this event and he went back to the Bible, and he had this critical breakthrough and a deeper vision of his faith and of the Bible and that he spoke about. And then he found his spiritual voice when he had this sudden event that happened. If you go and look at the many different lectures that I've had with Neville Goddard, in many of those instances, the spur for imagination is a crisis situation. Somebody has to get money quickly, and they will recite a certain phrase and go into a meditative state. Or Neville Goddard is in a crisis. He's about to go to war, and he relaxes and imagines that he's in his own apartment. He takes it as an advantage to understand the spiritual power that he had. And it turns out that crisis had spurred him to learn a particular technique in reality creation he would probably not have learned if he had not been in a situation where he had been drafted and about to be sent to war. So there's always that seems a gift in crisis that turns out to be a huge benefit. When I went through a struggle with alcohol, when I went through that struggle, I would not have learned the many things about my own self and how my mind works. If I had not gone through that struggle, I would not have wanted to open up my inner soul to understand what was going on. So all religions and mythologies speak of the critical tests faced by great spiritual teachers before their final victory. The individual who became the Buddha faced a supreme crisis before he achieved enlightenment. He sat underneath the Bodhi tree. He was visited by the great Mara, the Lord of Desire of Illusion. This invidious entity first insisted that he abandon his foolish quest for enlightenment and start living up to his social obligations. Then it came to him surrounded by voluptuous female spirits named lust, restlessness, and greed, tempting the future world savior with carnal desire. When that failed, the Mara approached him in the form of Lord Death, along with a horrible army of demonic forms with multiple mouths, lolling tongues, and pointed teeth. In their hands they carried bows and arrows, darts, clubs, and swords, even blazing mountains. But through all this, Gautama Sakyamuni remained still unmoved by desire, fear, or the necessity of social commitments. Only after these tests were met and overcome did he become the Buddha, the Enlightened One. the Christian Savior Jesus, faced a similar encounter when he retreated to the wilderness, fasting for 40 days after his baptism. His temptations concerned hunger and pride and power. After undergoing this testing crisis, Jesus begins his earth-shaking story in earnest in the Bible. Although the trials in these accounts are different, they touch on the same truth. Not only is every crisis a possible breakthrough that creates an advantage, but most breakthroughs are in fact preceded by a crisis of some kind. Mythologist Joseph Campbell describes the cyclical pattern of crisis and breakthrough with the term monomyth, or the mythological round. All of us tread the path of the monomyth in our heroic quest toward spiritual fulfillment. In this cycle, we, as the heroine or the hero, are called to journey and inner exploration. Along this adventure, we encounter challenges as well as assistance. The challenges, according to Campbell, will test our courage, our compassion, and our faith. Ultimately, we are brought to the supreme test, which, if met successfully, is followed by a profound transformation. As a result of this rebirth, we discover new abilities or insights that can benefit us and others as well. Then we proceed once again along the cycle of growth. If we didn't have crises, we wouldn't have growth in many, many cases. And because this pattern is so fundamental, its evidence is everywhere. You can probably point to several illustrations in your own life. I was thinking about Cayce's psychic readings. They offer countless examples of critical situations that ushered in breakthrough experiences in the book that I was just reading. In 1914, Edgar's son, Hugh Lynn, Edgar Cayce's son, accidentally ignited a box of photographic flash powder, which blew up in his face, and the local physicians announced that he would never see again. The young boy, who had previously felt embarrassed by his father's strange ability, declared that when asleep, his dad was a wonderful doctor and pleaded for a reading. Bolstered by his son's confidence, Edgar quickly complied. The psychically recommended treatments proved effective, and after the crisis, Hugh Lynn became a tireless supporter of his father's work. And if you read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, he talks about his son not being able to hear and suffering, and then using that as an advantage. And there are several examples in that book of people facing a crisis and becoming a breakthrough, as examined by Napoleon Hill himself, who struggled many times in many different employment opportunities to make money. And then this breakthrough happened where he decided and learned that he could create wealth from his own mind. In 1937, a man came to Edgar Cayce seeking relief from anemia and a leg fracture that refused to heal. In the reading, the man asked, "What was the purpose of my accident?" It turned out that for years he had a powerful interest in painting, but had done very little about it. The reading suggested that the accident had offered him an opportunity to get in touch with his true mission in life. He was told of an earlier incarnation in which he had found tremendous joy. As an earlier Christian, despite the fact that he was lame, he was advised to paint scenes of the life of Jesus, which his disciples, and was told that his purpose in his life was to use painting to bring hope into the hearts of all people. And that reminds me, when I went on this journey and my father had passed away and I was in deep depression, even though I thought I had found the spiritual principles to help me along this path, I decided to paint. And as a process, I rediscovered a previous incarnation of mine and really opened up the creative part of myself, and that I used that moment, that deep sadness to create, and it ended up being a transformation for myself. Thousands have discovered opportunities for a personal breakthrough from crisis. And these discoveries for breakthroughs are often made in the midst of crises. A man from London tells of his extraordinary suffering from arthritis of the hips. He was in such chronic pain that he could barely climb stairs. After reading some of the Edgar Cayce material in a local library, he started applying the treatments for arthritis that Cayce had prescribed years earlier for other people. And the man had such success with the treatments that he became a devoted teacher of Cayce's principles. In overcoming his crisis, he found new opportunities for service and commitment. Every single major crisis that I have gone through has turned in an opportunity, especially an opportunity to teach others. I've gone through things financially that I don't want other people to go through in the process of reality creation. And the thing to be aware of is that even if you don't think this crisis will have a benefit to you, years later you will look back on it, some incredible change. It might have led to some other breakthrough. Breakthroughs come in all forms. A crisis in one area of life can create a breakthrough in another. I recommend you read the play The Shadow Box by Michael Christopher, which has 3 stories unfold simultaneously, and each is about a terminally ill patient and the impact of crisis on his or her relationships. No one is miraculously healed in the play, yet profound healings are achieved in the various relationships involving wives, lovers, and children. The play is one of victory and breakthrough, even in the face of inevitable death. A similar story is found in even when there's death, there is advantage in the crisis. There's so many different cases of people, because of a death-like experience, going through transformations. It is not limited to anything in particular. It happens in everything. And so we are talking about this in particular. It's really well developed in reality transurfing. And it's interesting to listen to Zealand talk about crisis, because there are several different teachings that he has in 2 separate books. He talks about it in Reality Transurfing, and he talks about it in Tufti the Priestess. Both wonderful books. If you are not aware of Vadim Zealand, he is a great Russian writer of metaphysics, and I recommend that you read his book. It is amazing. And so the thing is, you have to learn to love crises, and you will be able to turn crises into opportunities. That's the real thing that I have learned in my own life. And so a lot of times these crises are created by pendulums or outside entities, and they're not really a crisis at all. And they impose foreign doors that they use for crises to stop you. So I was going to read a couple passages. It is unlikely, Zealand says, that anyone can free themselves totally from the influence of pendulums that strive to impose foreign doors. It is likely that you previously burst through the wrong doors. Even now that you have more knowledge, you are not immune to error. Everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is to not fall into despair or criticize yourself too harshly. You will eventually find your own door. A door is an opening into another reality when Zealand says that. And a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. So if you are in a mode of reality creation, then you're going to be trying some new things. And you can make mistakes. It's never really a mistake. a person who has never made a mistake, never tried anything new. You are surrounded by people who live like robots, who do not set themselves goals and do not even read books or listen to podcasts like this one. And these people want more, but they do not have the intent to act. The advantage people like this have is that they do not make mistakes. You, on the other hand, will undoubtedly make mistakes, Zealand says. When you are doing this process that we're talking about, that Neville Goddard is teaching of reality creation, you will undoubtedly make mistakes. All you have to do is use them. True success grows from the ruins of past failures. You will inevitably encounter difficulties when you knock at foreign doors, and those are different realities than your own. From the outside, it will be obvious to everyone that you are having to overcome obstacles and you are battling with various problems, but that is just the superficial view of things. No one, including you, will see that deep down your heart is strongly opposed to having to walk through a foreign door. The mind oppresses the heart with its forceful will, insisting that they fight to the end. But even in people who are very strong-willed, there is a limit to how long the heart can take being oppressed, and things end in crisis. So it's important to know when you're in crisis, that's the best time to align the heart and mind. What is your feelings telling you to do? And you may be undergoing a battle between your heart and mind, and that your heart is the one that's powerful and can force crises. And so sometimes you hear about crises that occur, and it could be because the heart finally just said, I've had enough. It's time for me to turn on my God power. So that's why you need to connect to your heart. First of all, it will reduce crises because your heart won't, as is described here, it won't snap out on your reality to try to mold it to what it wants, because the heart is always the one that is more powerful. The mind oppresses the heart with its forceful will, insisting that they fight to the end. But even in people who are very strong-willed, there is a limit. So you might think, I'm so strong-willed with my mind, I can do it. Even then. So the annoying thing is that the crisis can take the form of committing an unforgivable faux pas. When a person is in a state like this, they easily make very basic mistakes. It can happen to anyone, including the powers that be. People that know and are spiritually well aware will do this. On the path that leads through a foreign door, a new reality, you can expect there to be moments of crisis. Expect the crisis. You're asking to change your reality in a big way. So it's going to have big changes, right? Or are you just expecting a small reality change? Are you afraid of these big changes? Expect the crisis to happen, because that'll be your springboard. And you can expect to make mistakes, but try to avoid making blunders. Rent yourself out to the pendulums that you have to use. Don't give your energy with impeccability. Do what you have to do. The paradox is that a major mistake tends to be forgiven more easily than a minor oversight. Now, I don't know what that means, but I've always found that interesting that he said that. Do not expect any sympathy, even from those closest to you in a crisis. So a guidance that Transurfing says is don't be expecting any sympathy, because you don't need it. So another topic that they talk about in Transurfing is accusers and manipulators as a part of the crisis process. Accusers and manipulators do not set themselves high goals, which is why they do not make mistakes. Do not give them reason to accuse you of an unforgivable, if relatively minor, offense. Be impeccable in the small things, then any crisis you have on the path through a new door of reality, or a foreign door as what he says, will be less traumatic. It is also advisable to be cautious of the advice given by loved ones who definitely want the absolute best for you. And so another point is you're going to have people that are going to try to tell you what they want you to do in these crisis situations. Another really important point that's pointed out in the Transurfing book is the person that's the observer always has the advantage in a crisis. If you're taking one side or the other, if you're pulling into the emotions of it, then you do not have the advantage. Always remember that on one aspect is the observer has the advantage. So Transurfing really emphasizes going your own way, following your own heart, not following what pendulums or friends or family tell you to do. Now, as Zealand says, if you are decidedly going your own way in life and suffer some kind of defeat, you can expect no mercy. They will cry, "We told you so, but you never listened to us." And they will use your failure against you. At this moment, your position will be very weak, upset by misfortune you have had to endure, and the manipulators around you will exploit your weakness, trying to get their claws into you. People will use crisis to manipulate you. They will use a crisis to manipulate your emotions, your feelings, and create fear. We are seeing it now, all the time. So you have to be aware of that particular energy and that particular interaction. They get to assert themselves, and you have to be resigned and submissive in a crisis situation. Anyone finds themselves in a quandary will always attract advisors and manipulators pursuing the same goal, which we see right now in the coronavirus situation. We see the advisors and manipulators pursuing the same goal. You see people that are putting out misinformation, and you see advisors to put you in your place to seize the opportunity of manipulating you, or of going up in their own estimation by coming all the old soldier over the newfound foul up. Their words, clothed in packaging of sincere participation, can be translated as, "Whatever did you think you were getting yourself into? Did you think you were better than us? Sit here and keep your head down. Live like we do. We know more about life than you do. In a moment of weakness, doubts will sneak in. Maybe they are right. I do not know what I'm doing." You inevitably ask yourself whether it is worth listening to the advisors and the manipulators. How might they be right? Only in the fact that you have made a mistake. Anyone who ever tries to achieve something will have times when they make mistakes, even if they are guided by the advice of those who supposedly know better. Only you can find your goal. No one else can do this for you. Even those who genuinely wish you well cannot look right into your soul, for even you hear the whisperings of your heart. As Zealand loves to use the term, when you hear the whisperings of your heart, it's the rustle of the morning stars. Barely audible. Do not give in to the influence of other people. Believe in yourself. In the search for your goal, do not listen to anyone and follow your heart. I've always loved that particular teaching by Zealand. It's important. As far as choosing your innermost goal in life is concerned, you have to be persistent and adamant in relation to pendulums and extremely attentive to your own heart. As you can see, the only excuse in the process of choosing your destiny is the fact that not all goals and doors in the alternative space or the space of variations are truly meant for you. This does not mean, however, that you cannot choose them. Nothing prohibits you from making such a choice, but you can expect to encounter problems as a result. Remember that Neville Goddard says that all of reality has been created already. That means all the different possible realities for you has already been created in the imagination of God. Some of them are not meant for you, but you can still select them. We are selectors of our reality. We're not actually, in reality, we're not really creating our reality. We're selecting it. And if you select a reality that's not really meant for you, then you will face difficulty. But nothing is prohibiting you from doing it. Do you really need that difficulty in those other realities? There are certain realities that don't want you. They just, oh man, he chose this one. So when you choose a doorway into a new reality, you are taking the path of greatest resistance. The whole beauty of the freedom of choice lies in the fact that personal goals and doors appear to the individual to be so much better than any other. But in order to indulge in freedom of choice, you have to free yourself from the influence of pendulums that impose foreign goals and doors. You do not want pendulums to impose other changes into reality on you, because they will impose reality changes on you. You are in control of your reality if you choose it. Now, the pendulum will use the crisis to force you to change your reality. And it's interesting. Zealand says the pendulum will send you a prod in the form of exhaustion or malaise while you're in a period of crisis. Your condition will worry you deeply. And you think to yourself, well, I must be unwell. I must be sick. This is your response to the pendulum sway. The pendulum, if you check out my episode on everything you want to know about pendulums but we're afraid to ask. And in that, a pendulum is an energy entity that forms when multiple people are thinking a similar thought. We see it everywhere. And one of the interesting concepts that's talked about in Transurfing is how pendulums pull your energy, but more importantly, very powerful pendulums like the government's a pendulum, or political parties, or everything is a pendulum on so many different levels. But some pendulums that you literally depend on will invoke changes in your reality, and it wants its energy. It's just a natural energy structure. It doesn't really care. And so you'll give it some energy, and then it will prod you. It will make you exhausted, Zealand is saying. It'll make you sick. And he says, this is your response to the pendulum sway. Having received a bout of energy, the pendulum prods you again, making it hurt even more. You go to the doctor, who confirms your illness, and the process continues to unfold, Zealand says. The pendulum receives energy and sways even harder, and the pendulum maximizes your crisis. By the time the crisis hits, Zealand says, the pendulum will already have taken everything it can take, leaving you alone to begin your recovery. If, of course, the induced transition has not thrown its victim onto an invalid lifeline. Does this mean that you should not go to the doctor or take any medicine and should refuse all help in coping with your illness? No. To refuse the possible cure for an illness that has reached its developed stage is irresponsible and reckless, and in certainly no way to leave the game. The issue is how to avoid being drawn into the game in the first place. So there's some steps that we can take. There's methods of transformation in the period of crisis that I have listed here. And the first important step really is to take responsibility and accept the situation. Everything that is happening is your fault. Now, I know that's hard. And maybe it's not true. I just want you to take responsibility for everything that's happening, even if it feels like it's unfair. If you are going to say that you create your reality, you cannot say that your reality is an accident. Even the most bizarre part of your reality is your creation. That's hard to believe. Did you create the coronavirus? Maybe you did. But you created the little pocket of reality that you're in now. Accept your condition. Take responsibility. A Kansas farmer who had managed to live through 75 years of ups and downs was asked by a young acquaintance how he had been able to maintain his cheerful outlook on life for so many years. And the old farmer said, "That's simple. When you're in a bind, you just figure out the worst thing that could happen to you, accept it, and then go on from there." Accept it. Without realizing it, the farmer had lived by a principle that Carl Jung identified as the first requirement for heeding any condition. Nothing, Jung said, can be changed unless it is first accepted. So beyond taking responsibility, just accept the situation that you're in. The same wisdom is found in an ancient fable. According to the story, a village was frozen in fear and mourning because it knew that a dragon was planning to devour every person in it. Everyone could see the dragon on a far-off mountain looming as large as fear itself. They could hear its horrible roar, louder than the crack of thunder. Now a young stranger happened by and decided to confront the dragon, so off he went to climb the dreaded mountain. Curiously, however, the closer he got to the dragon, the smaller it appeared. When he finally reached the monster, it was no longer than a cat, and its fearsome roar had diminished to something like purring. The stranger tucked the creature under his arm and returned to the village. Everyone was amazed at his story and marveled at the cute little dragon that they'd held in such dread. Eventually, someone asked the dragon's name, whereupon, to everyone's amazement, the dragon itself spoke. "I am known and feared by many names throughout the world, but ultimately, all know me as what might happen." So the point is, you don't want to get caught up in the fear of what might happen in the point of crisis. Accepting where you're at is important. Taking responsibility for it, that gives you the ability to change it. It doesn't mean giving up. This word, according to Jung, acceptance does not mean giving up, means something far more positive than resignation. On the contrary, acceptance is the bravest of confrontations. It's looking your situation squarely in the eye and saying, "Okay, I see you, and I know you're real, and I'm going to take some action." And events happen to you that are clearly beyond your direct influence. A tornado may crash through your town and may even destroy your home. How can you possibly take responsibility for that? On a surface level, you can't. However, if you deny any responsibility for what happens to you, you're likely to consider yourself a victim of random circumstances. And you don't want to create that reality for yourself. This sort of victim consciousness won't lead to any kind of breakthrough. The theory of reincarnation can be helpful in addressing this dilemma. When circumstances seem to mark you as an innocent victim, you can still affirm within yourself that something deep in your soul has purposely attracted this experience to you. The danger in this past life perspective is getting sidetracked into the puzzling questions. What awful thing did I do in a past life that made me deserve such a fate? Unfortunately, it may be impossible to come up with a reliable answer. The mysteries of our distant soul past are likely to remain clouded. What's more, the line of speculation focuses on events from the past rather than those of the here and now. The important question is, how can I grow now from this experience? best understood, reincarnation may be accessed as a tool that allows us to accept the present moment, taking responsibility for all aspects of our lives. The next thing I would do is identify the quality that you need to deal with this situation is the next step. You've probably heard the expression, if this doesn't kill me, it will make me stronger. Well, there's wisdom in that. But in dealing with a real life crisis, it's helpful to be as specific as possible in identifying the exact strength that the difficulty evokes from within you. Ask yourself in this crisis situation, what is this evoking? What strength inside of me is this evoking? One crisis may call forth assertiveness, another gentleness. One problem may demand that you become self-sufficient, yet another could require that you learn to achieve a balance between giving and receiving. When you face a serious problem, try to determine what exactly is being demanded of you by recognizing the quality or trait you need in order to handle the crisis creatively. You begin to usher in the breakthrough. As you strive actively to develop that feature, you are no longer a victim of circumstance, but a hero or heroine along a transformative journey. The next important step in a crisis, before we get to the most important, which the final is, and that's advantage, is you have to stay hopeful. It's so important that you find a way to stay hopeful. The very fact that we are capable of hope provides evidence of the existence of the soul. In another story, a woman came to Edgar Cayce beset with problems in her home life, and her husband was being unfaithful, and she was considering a divorce. At the same time, she was also feeling estranged from her children. And Cayce, she asked repeatedly why she had failed in so many areas of her life, and Cayce insisted that she had not failed, that she would not fail unless she lost hope and stopped trying. The same Kansas farmer who was willing to accept the worst summarized his philosophy of success this way: prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Without hope, you get nothing. Without hope. The entire course of human life can be seen as a series of crises, starting with birth. Every change thereafter is also a kind of birth. Some are predictable and well documented: the challenges of adolescence, the trials of adulthood, the midlife dilemmas that force us to regroup and prepare for more productive later years. Other serious challenges may come unexpectedly, but all contain the same opportunities to refashion oneself. Even death is just another crisis through which we are born again into a new dimension of life. In every crisis, we encounter opportunities for new life growth and understanding. Sometimes these periods demand the very most of us. Occasionally, we may feel there is no way out of a situation, that we are caught between a rock and a hard place. I know who you are. I hear from you all the time. But like the Israelites who found themselves pinned between the attacking Egyptians and the crashing waves of the sea, we may be surprised to find that there is hope and there is miracles that can happen. So, when you look at the advantage method, which is the final and most important step, we really should focus on the advantage chapter, which discusses this as a technique, as a method. So the final thing I wanted to talk about and go over is this chapter on advantage. As Zealand explains, you are dual beings, capable of being on both sides of the mirror. And you are present here when you are there. To be present, you have to shift your attention to the center, to be the observer. In the condition of being present, you are capable of jumping from one film roll to another. And this is when Zealand says you're capable of jumping from one reality to another. In the condition of being present when the crisis begins. He explains composing reality is not about controlling the script, but choosing the film roll. When you're in a script and things are happening all around you, you probably aren't going to be able to change them in that moment. It's already happened. You're in the script. But you can choose the film roll. The desire to influence the script binds you to it. Once you try to start changing the script, it doesn't work. Once again, let's consolidate what we've covered so far. You need to influence the final result, the forthcoming frame, not events and people. All you have to do is illuminate the goal frame, and the course of events will unfold as they should. The script does not belong to you. It is never yours, even when you think that it is your idea. If you try to change it or oppose it, the script will trap you. So you have something that's going on, you try to change it or oppose it. This is very delicate to understand. As you listen to this multiple times, it will start to make sense in your own situation that you're in. The script that Zealand's talking about is like a spider's web. The more you wriggle, the more you become entwined. For the script to let you go, you have to let go of the script. You can never be entirely free of the script. Remember when we spoke about imitation, I told you that the script is not the result of anyone's subjective will, but an objective reality from which there is no escape. And yet there is no need to escape. The script will work towards your goal if you set one. When you compose reality, the script rearranges itself to fit your composition, even if you cannot perceive this happening. All you have to do is systematically illuminate the goal frame. Continue to live in the end, as Neville Goddard explains. But you will persist in having everything run according to your plan, and in this, you hinder the implementation of what you have imagined. When you try to do it all under your plan, and you don't let the universe do it for you. And even when you do not actively compose reality, passively drifting along the current of events, the script isn't out to harm you, because causing harm is energetically costly. The script always takes the path of least resistance. But you resist, and so you spoil everything. Now, this resistance that Zealand is talking about is your initial reactions to crisis. You spoil things in as much as you express non-acceptance. In this way, unconsciously, and without deliberately meaning to, you compose for yourself a worse reality than the existing one, albeit not as effectively as you would with intention and awareness. You condescend to express your dislike every time something contradicts your expectations and plans. So something comes up, you get a flat tire, right? And you can emit a terrible agony and anger over this flat tire that you have. But maybe, just maybe, if you were in another script, then you would have been in a car accident if you got back in the car. So you have to, that's the advantage that we're talking about. The script always takes the path of least resistance, but you resist and you spoil everything. You spoil things in as much as you express non-acceptance, it says. That's how you are, irritating and tedious. So to avoid distorting reality, instead of turning it into a wonderful world that is pleasant in all respects, you will need to make a habit of one simple principle. Find the advantage in everything. Find the advantage in everything. This is a game changer. It's something that was kind of offhand mentioned the first time you read through the Tufti book and you're kind of focused on the plot. But then it just keeps on coming up when you have real life events come up in your life. And you find yourself coming back to this advantage method. Find the advantage in everything. Literally try and take the advantage from any disappointing situation, and generally from any event that causes you the slightest feeling of aversion. Your reaction in that moment is the key. Set yourself the goal of reaping the benefit. Any event or situation in life is made up of the negative and the positive. Reality is dual in nature. Where there is black, there you will find white. Your task, instead of wrestling with it and being single-minded and sloppy, is to set about seeking the advantage in any situation. I won't give examples, just try it and you'll understand instantly just how brilliantly this approach works. I'm telling you, I've had so many things come up and I've instantly applied this and it all turned out better. But in order for it to work, as you must understand already, it is essential that you wake up and shift your attention to the center. Become the observer. The triggers are here for mainly external. Someone says something or does something, or something is happening or being done around you. Anything that evokes a feeling of non-acceptance, anytime you have that feeling that comes up of non-acceptance, from a slight displeasure to rage to fear, the feelings activated include irritation, depression, anxiety, aggression, and fear. So if you have those feelings, go to the center screen and ask yourself, what is the advantage? The intention is shifted to the center in order to disengage from the script on the current film roll and skip to another. Now, it's very important. The really great understanding that comes out of Tufti, the priestess, is that you are not in the script if you wake up in the moment. I see myself and I see reality, and you go to that observer mode. So when you go into this mode, that is when you are able to change the script. The fact is that your usual script affects your standard film roll. You give a knee-jerk reaction due to your noxiousness character or your propensity to be negative, or your habit of being defensive or elevated opinion of yourself, or simply because nothing is going the way you want it to. And as a result, usually, you make life difficult for yourself and others. On the alternative film roll, on the alternative script, in the alternative state, in contrast, everything turns out to your advantage because you stopped at the right moment and made that advantage your choice. You're choosing the advantage. Remember in that moment of reaction that you still have not created your reality. So if you are scared and you hear some terrible news, that's when you want to bring on the advantage. It is very simple. What you choose is what you get in every moment. So you have something terrible, the next moment choose something different. Don't accept something that you do not want to accept. What you choose is what you get. In order to make the choice, all you have to do is think for a moment and ask yourself, what might be the advantage of this? And from then on, try and follow the script rather than resist it. When you finally choose the script, and you choose it, you're choosing the script, go with it. Don't oppose yourself to it. That's when you openly just move in with the script. It's a Zen-like thing that may not make sense. The more you go back and listen to this, it will. You literally take the piece of advice, listen to the opinion, agree, go for something, accept whatever you would previously have rejected, or seen as a cause for conflict. The advantage method is described by Zealand as the following. First, you catch yourself playing out the non-acceptance activator. Then you wake up and you say to yourself, I see myself and I see reality. When I do that, I kind of separate reality from myself. And then ask yourself the question, what advantage might there be in this? If an answer comes to you in the moment that you ask that, accept it and reap the benefits and move towards that. Now, if nothing comes to you, you try and accept there is a situation for what it is, and you accept that there is an advantage that you're just not aware of it. The last point sounds a little questionable and fishy. After all, not everything in life is acceptable, and there is not necessarily an advantage to every situation. Suppose that someone is about to beat you round the head. What are you supposed to do? Hold it out for them to take another swipe? Nonetheless, in reality, there is one immutable law. The law has it that if you take seeking advantage as a guiding principle in life, you will encounter fewer and fewer events that are harmful. This includes the kind of events that result in having a blue face and a cold body and lying in the morgue. So, yes, everything is not to your advantage, but the mindset that everything is to your advantage is a game changer. And the reason is, it's again, the secret behind transurfing is that it's kind of a mental karate, how to deal with the ongoing creation of reality as you really go into the moment and watch it unfold within you. There is a way of dealing with these things, and you're going to have things come up because you are becoming more powerful. And as you become more powerful, you have more powerful events happening around you. And so it's all a test. And sometimes everything that you ever wanted is right behind your next crisis. And all you have to do is get through it. All you have to do is make the choice. All you have to do is take responsibility. Take responsibility and accept it. Identify the qualities in you that this will build up, that will strengthen, to bring forth something in you that and help it give you a reason to help others and transform you. And find the hope that is within you. And then use the advantage method. Use the advantage method. Now, there is one exercise I recommend. Take a close look at your life. It may be full of crises right now, some small scale and likely to pass, or others more serious or long term. Pick just one of them in order to evaluate how you're doing so far, and using that crisis to make a constructive breakthrough. When you've made your selection, ask yourself these questions. Have I brought a feeling of acceptance to my situation? Have I taken responsibility for it? What are the qualities I'll need to deal with this situation? Am I hopeful? And what is the advantage to this situation for me? Then invest special attention and effort in any step that you haven't been applying successfully and change it. Many of us are in tough times, and I remind you, go and read the book Dolores Cannon, The 3 Waves of Volunteers. At one time I had this on my channel, but go read it. As we are moving to this new earth, this wonderful new earth where we are raising levels of our consciousness and moving into something greater, the key is that we need to hold the light. We need to choose to love. We need to let go of the fear. And it's a moment by moment. When you read the 3 Waves of Volunteers, the description that's given in that book is that the movement to the new earth is a step-by-step choice. You're making a choice with every decision you make. And so a system like transurfing and the advice that I'm giving you in this podcast is the advice that you can use to filter these choices that you make. And as you make the positive choice, you move to the new earth, to a new reality, to a new life that is beyond anything that you can imagine. I'd love to get your take on how you deal with crises. And if you've overcome a crisis, please put your story in the comments. I want people to see it. I want people to read about it. I know it's tough right now. I know it's scary. I know that your job may be changing, your life may be changing. You might be literally going into a completely new business. And that's scary. You might be having to move. And that's scary. Just go through these steps and listen to the stories that I've told you. And I promise you, if you take the right focus, everything that's happening, no matter how bad it is to your advantage. Every crisis is an opportunity for a breakthrough. Every crisis is an opportunity to find and discover the advantage to you. Thank you for joining me again today. All episodes of The Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to the Reality Revolution.